Hey, what's up everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be watching Alita-Battle Angel. So Alita-Battle Angel is a 2019 science fiction cyberpunk film that is produced and written by James Cameron and directed by Robert Rodriguez, and is based off the the cyberpunk manga Battle Angel Alita, illustrated and written by Yukito Kishido. And essentially, I'm going to talk about this film for a couple reasons. A, it's out in theaters at the time of this recording, so get the hype going. And the other is that while normally with these kinds of adaptations, I like to focus on the source material in the case of the manga. And honestly, I probably will be doing the manga at some point, but I want to talk about the film for another reason, that it does something that I feel sometimes adaptations fail to do, and that is, while it is important to capture the spirit of the source material, to capture the feel, the vibe, and generally the aesthetic that kind of made adhered it to audiences. When you translate something from a like a comic book medium, or even just a literary medium of any kind, would be a novel or what have you, to a visual medium like film, for instance, there's always certain things that need to be kind of changed and altered to kind of make it flow, especially if you want to kind of capture the feeling of the source material. Meaning, if you want this story to do in film what it did on the pages of a manga, you have to approach it a little bit differently. The other thing to do is sometimes to kind of make it adhere to a wider audience, and yet usually means kind of capturing the feeling of the source material while at the same time blending it with a little bit of the cultural landscape of the day. And in a weird way, Battle Angel, I have to get used to saying Alita-Battle Angel because I was thinking of the manga where it's Battle Angel Alita, which is the kind of the US or Western translation. It is a story that in a strange way is more relevant today than ever before, and does a good job of taking in a lot of what you're seeing the seeds of happening now in terms of kind of the global geopolitical landscape. And what I mean by that is that we're living in an era now where we're seeing kind of old divides kind of crop up again. If you look at history, you see kind of peaks and valleys in terms of cultural understanding, ideology, where there'll be periods of time where things are a bit smoother, more easygoing, temperaments aren't really flaring, and then things kind of get riled up. And we're living currently in an era where, there are hostilities around the world. There's not just, let's say, saber rattling, but people who are just everyone's getting kind of up in arms, and everyone's trying to close ranks and circle the wagons, and are being, made to fear change. We're in a time of change, and there's always going to be kind of a bit of a pushback. And in this world, you're seeing a civilization that is the fallout of divide. It's years after a war, where basically society on Earth is kind of broken up into two sections. You have this beautiful floating city in the sky, which is essentially kind of touted as a utopian civilization, and then you have everybody else in the city below, which is, it's overcrowded, there's tension, there's hostility, and you're seeing this kind of cultural divide. And it's almost classist, where you can get the sense that the people who live up top are very much of a certain kind of economic background, and the cities are divided. They do not mix with one another. There is no contact. And if you kind of look at how things are going today, you're seeing how perhaps, not necessarily how a civilization like that could form, but how the mentality to get to a situation like that can form. How you're starting to see that before cities can be divided, before nations can be divided, before people can be divided, it is the way we think that is divided. It is how we view something that is divided. And when you kind of remove that common ground, and when you draw that kind of very clear defined line in the sand, that's when everything starts to kind of pull apart. So you could, it starts with people just facing one another, but again, there's that line in the middle, and then slowly more and more builds up in between them until eventually there's conflict, There's all kinds of issues that eventually just fully divide, and then when the dust settles, the smoke clears, you have two groups of people that are very much removed from one another, and there's no more mixing, there's no more matching. And this story does that very well. And again, it follows the character Alita, who is, you find out who is a cyborg, the girl who lost her memory, come to find out that she is in fact this kind of fallen warrior that was part of kind of this Martian Federation that was at war with now the ruling class of Earth, and basically it was this big, interstellar war, and she was one of their finest class of warrior, and now she is essentially trying to find her place in this new world, this new future, and is trying to figure out how does she balance herself out. And there's a great moment where they talk about this body that she has adhered herself to, that is, aids in her ability to fight, that enhances the natural combat instinct that she has. And the doctor even tells her that it's not good, it's not bad, that part is up to you. And she's trying to discover herself, what it means to essentially be a blend of two things in a world where there really, where there's a lot of blending because there's a lot of cyborgs walking around. But in terms of mentalities, there seems to be very clear-cut mentalities, and she is essentially trying to find a way to be good and trying to find a way to be this noble individual, even though she's essentially in the body of like a perfect killing machine, no pun intended. And this is a world where, some characters even said, the weak and the innocent do not survive. And she has sworn to stand in the face of evil. She will not stand for it. And she is built more formidable than anything she's standing against. And yet she will not allow herself to become a monster. She will not allow herself to become just an instrument of death. Whereas if this body were on somebody else, that's exactly what they would do. So it's a character who is essentially trying to do what these two worlds have, forgotten how to do, and that is blend. She is basically now a product of two different worlds. Her body and her ability to fight comes from one, not just another world, but another time. But also her way of thinking now is more of that of this world. This new identity, this new sense of self was essentially born on Earth. So she is now trying to blend these two together to be a new person. She's not trying to be who she was, but she understands that she cannot necessarily be who certain people wanted her to be. She has to find who she is, and she has to meet herself in the middle. So it's strange because it feels very allegorical, and it feels that because of that it applies much more today, where you're seeing a lot of divisions cropping up. You're seeing a lot of different groups of people cutting themselves off from one another, from others, who are drawing these lines in the sand, who are trying to be separated from each other rather than being a part of each other. And she is not letting these boundaries define her. She's not letting these boundaries stopping her. And she's made it very clear, just as in the source material in this film, that she is not going to let these preconceived notions of restrictions stop her. She is going to fight through. She's a warrior, so she's going to take that mentality of not being stopped and not being defeated and apply it to kind of more of a personal revolution, and by and large perhaps even a cultural one. You see her trying to rally others like herself, and she deals with a lot of difficulty in that, because again, this is a world where people are rooted in this idea of where it's dog eat dog, the strong prevail over the weak, you take what you can, and you live for yourself. And she does not have that mentality. She is fighting for a greater good. She is fighting for the whole, not just herself. In this film, does a very good job of taking that concept from the manga and presenting it in a way that feels culturally extremely relevant to today, to what is happening now. And because of that, she, as a superhero, because she is a superhero, there's a lot of these mangas were essentially Japanese superheroes, and it's very cool to see the kind of superheroes that I grew up loving now making their way to the big screen, because I was always more into anime and manga. So for me, these are my heroes. So I like, these are my Cape Crusaders. So I like being able to see that now. So when people say I'm not really the superhero, I'm like, well, I am, but superheroes from across the pond. But yeah, so you see her now very much a metaphor for change and kind of a voice for people who do not want to be put into a box and do not want to be told by, the powers that be who they have to be, what they have to be, and how they have to live. And she is, a one girl cultural revolution that is spreading, and that she is the seed of change. So that's kind of what was my big takeaway from the movie, and the film did that, I feel, exceptionally well. And that was kind of my concern going into the movie, because it looked very good. The people behind it, they've proven themselves quite capable, so I wasn't too worried about that. But my fear was that kind of the deeper meaning of the story might be lost. That the movie itself might just be very surface level in the sense that it'll look very cool, the action will be good, and the main beats of this original arc in the manga would be there, but kind of the deeper meaning that it had, and a lot of the deeper meanings in a lot of like manga, especially from this era, kind of the post Blade Runner era of manga, I feel had a lot more to say, and my fear was that would be the part that would kind of got lost, because Hollywood would be more interested in, presenting kind of more sleek, polished movie that doesn't really say a lot, just looks really cool, but because, you had a lot of key players behind it, and most notably James Cameron and even Robert Rodriguez, I feel they managed to kind of maintain the integrity of the manga. So for people who are not familiar with it, can watch this film and then go back and read it and not feel like that's two different things. They feel destroyed. Well, I like the movie, but I don't know, the manga is too different, or vice versa. Coming from the other way, where you feel like, okay, while there have been some changes made, it definitely has a voice of its own. It's not just a carbon copy of the source material, but it takes everything that made the manga special, putting it on the big screen, and at the same time adding its own flair to it as well, so it translates to a larger audience, which is what we need for these films to be successful, as well as having a voice that speaks to today, to today's generation. That way it's not just going to appeal to the old fogies, who like anime, manga from back in the day. It'll resonate with a younger audience who are kind of the voice of this movement of change, this movement of progress. They are the ones who are going to take this into the future. So I felt it did a good job at speaking to them without being overly preachy. It wasn't like an after-school special, but I feel it's going to resonate better than I expected with people who are younger than myself. Not that I'm super old or anything, but maybe like teens and people in their early 20s. I feel they're going to walk away from this film, hopefully, and really get something out of it. And again, and ultimately, like I always say, hopefully bring them back to where it all started, the manga, because that should never be overshadowed. But I felt that it was important to talk about this film because A, it's probably one of the best manga to film adaptations ever, if not the best. There's been a ton of them, but this one's definitely up there. And it does a good job of adapting material in the right way. It's a great example of how to take something from one medium and translate it into another without sacrificing what made the original great, but at the same time not being a slave to it in the sense that you sacrifice, the proper way to present it in this other medium. So that's kind of really it, right? So Alita-Battle Angel, it is currently in theaters at the time of this recording, so when I normally put links in the description section below, it'll probably just say TBA for a little bit, but the second it comes out on VOD, Blu-ray, DVD, and what have you, that's I'll add some, go back, update it, add some links so you guys can rent it, buy it, and check it out. But but if you're watching this right now, February 2019, go out and see it in theater. Support the film. If nothing else, it's just a cool visual, ride at the movies. So you won't be bored with it, if nothing else. But if you're looking to get something more out of your movie, if you're looking to get something a little bit, weightier in terms of story, meaning for your buck, then this is a good one. This is definitely one that I think you'll be pleased with, satisfied with. I really loved it. Ashley really loved it. But even if you don't walk away thinking it's as great as we did, I think you'll still be pleased with the time you spend at the movies. I hope. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this one. So Alita-Battle Angel. Have you guys gone out in theaters and seen it? Depending when you're watching this, have you rented it, bought it on Blu-ray, whatever. But if you've seen it, let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel it compares to the manga. How do you feel they've adapted? Again, there are differences to be sure. But that is to be expected. If you have not seen it, please go out, check it out, come back, give me some of your thoughts, let me know what you think, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace!